Today we're talking about The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas, which was my book club pick. For my book club, Julie Hates This Book Club, which this was our March pick. My book club is named after my local censorship advocate, Julie Gebhardts.
Today's item of propaganda is this. Those far right-wing conservatives are targeting Black authors and LGBT content. That is propaganda at its finest. Because how many parents have you heard go into a school board meeting and say this? I don't want my child reading Black authors. Never.
So while this book has not been challenged or banned in Hillsborough County, Florida, where I live yet, it has been challenged and banned a whole heck of a lot of other places, especially in Florida. Floridians are never beating those racism accusations, are they? The Hate U Give is a young adult novel, a contemporary novel from 2017 that is in part about police violence against Black folks. But it's the story of Star Carter, a 16-year-old who, while coming home from a party with her friend Khalil, witnesses him being shot and murdered by a police officer. This is a very traumatic event for Star, who has already witnessed another one of her friends when she was younger die from gun violence. This very traumatic event forces Star into a situation where she's dealing with these very complex things, speaking out against violence while also keeping herself and her family safe, and systemic issues of inequality. This book is a very helpful tool for understanding race, identity, and the fight for justice against systemic inequality. And I'll be frank, if you think this book should be banned, you are either stupid or racist or both. Having read it, there is nothing in here that is inappropriate for teens. This book delivered exactly what it needed to deliver. You know who's been doing that for me lately is today's sponsor, which is Factor. We all know that I despise cooking. Carlos is currently on a work trip again, and Factor being delivered to my doorstep is the only reason that meals are getting eaten in this house. Much like Star Carter's dad from The Hate U Give, I can't cook. I used to be able to, but now I'm kind of bad at it. But that doesn't matter because with Factor's easy, delicious, ready-to-eat meals, they have eliminated the hassle of cooking and prep work and grocery shopping and cleanup. You just heat and eat. I also hate cleaning. I've recently gotten to try their smoky tofu and their goat cheese pasta. We all know that I love their mushroom marsala. I could eat that every single day and not get sick of it. I work from home. I drink Factor juices at lunchtime. In fact, if you've been on work lives with me at lunchtime, you've probably seen me drinking my Factor juice. Their dinners are perfect for after my workouts or even on the days I don't work out. Their dinners are perfect. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, and you can choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular ones like vegan and veggie, which are typically my favorite, but they have keto and protein plus, and you can also discover more than 60 add-ons every week, breakfast, lunch, snacks, beverages to help you feel good and stay fueled all day long. So what are you waiting for? Get something perfect delivered to your doorstep. Have Factor fill your fridge. Head to factor75.com or use the link down below and use code 50RWR to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor order. That's code 50RWR at factor75.com, and thank you so much to Factor for sponsoring today's video. Let me show you a video of a woman in New Orleans at the public library system, because this is a book that gets challenged at public libraries and at public school libraries. So let me show you this woman who is no longer on the library board. Girl, bye. See you never. Haha. Who decided to say that if she were Black, which she's not, she would be offended by this book. Before I let Carol speak, I would just like to say that the following clip I'm going to play first is my Resident County book banner, the full clip of her talking about why she tries to ban books. She claims that that right-wingers only are trying to ban books with sexual content in them. The Hate U Give has no sexual content, and Carol, on the library board in St. Tammany in Louisiana, admits that she is not trying to ban the book or restrict it to adults only, which is what happened to it, because of the sexual content. She believes it's not enough because there is no on-page sex in that book. She says the reason she wants it banned, and you will see this, is because she doesn't like the way that the Black woman author talks about the experience of being a Black American. So the following clip from Carol refutes the lie that my Resident County book banner, who my book club is named after, says in this full clip, which I will now play for you, and then I'll let Carol refute Julie's own talking point.
Good afternoon. Well, once again, it's Banned Books Week in America. So guess what that means? That means the American Library Association, the NEA, the teachers unions, once again, they're pushing Propaganda. Today's item of propaganda is this. Those far right-wing conservatives are targeting Black authors and LGBT content. That is propaganda at its finest. Because how many parents have you heard go into a school board meeting and say this? I don't want my child reading Black authors. Never. We're not targeting any specific authors unless they're promoting hypersexualized content in our school libraries. That's what we're targeting. We're not even targeting LGBT content in particular unless it is hypersexualized content, maybe instructing on how to perform certain sex acts and things like that. That's what we're targeting. We're targeting books that contain BDSM. And even actually, let's just add on in there, suicidal ideation, glorifying bulimia and self-harm, things like that. That's also what we're fighting against. So don't listen to the propaganda just because they say it over and over and over. In fact, that's the definition of propaganda. You repeat the same thing and people eventually just believe it because they've heard it so many times. How can it not be true? It's not true. Think critically and actually look at what's happening around you and don't believe the lies, don't believe the propaganda. It's just not true.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the book from a different perspective. First of all, I was troubled by this book. I actually spent a lot of time last night, stayed up most of the night when I shouldn't have, rereading a lot of it, kind of taking a different approach. I don't really feel like that sexual conduct is enough to restrict it for that. I don't think page 81 is enough. I will say, though, to you folks, and now I'm speaking as a former sociology associate professor, not an attorney. This book, if I were a Black person, I'd be offended by it. And that's what I think a lot of you folks aren't looking at. This is, let me finish. We've listened to you all. And by the way, clapping is not appropriate. You all were warned of that in the very beginning, but nobody seems to pay attention to any of the rules. So now let me speak. This author, okay, I singled out several pages. First of all, she sends an underlying message, and I don't believe it's in her intent. She is a good author. I was impressed. I read up on her. I went the much further extra mile than most people would.
No, Carol, you did the bare minimum. That is quite literally the bare minimum. Trying to figure out the author's intention before you decide whether or not a book is worthy of being on shelves is quite literally, Carol, the bare minimum.
But she implies through that book that this thug life is very much the norm. That's not a message you want to give to young Black people. That's not a message you want to give to anybody. You want to tell them to rise above, like President Obama, like all the Black professionals out there, many, 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 some of whom are good friends of mine. She refers to pregnancy of girls in high school. And yes, she tells this young man not to go further, but then there's also implied that pregnancy in high school is a norm. No, it shouldn't be the norm. That's what the title means. It's referring to thug life. Even her acknowledgments, I read her acknowledgments, and she says she praises Tupac, referring to him as a thug and a gangster. She praises as inspirational her agent, and she calls the agent the biggest D, the biggest doper. So, as far as empathy, yes, but I'm disappointed. I think she could have done a lot better with this, and I think we have to be careful. And some of these books that we think are really defending the minority community are making it seem like, they're so downtrodden and this, that, and the other. But in fact, a lot of these books seem to be impliedly geared at keeping these people that way. That's not what we want. We don't want young people to read this and say, oh yeah, look at this, I'm cool like this thug, like this gangster, this is cool. She goes on, there's one statement here, to me that sends a message of violence against women. She quotes, this is a quote, I'll give you the page 16. She's talking about one of the classmates, says, I quote, I see that bitch, I'm about to handle her ass. Okay, That's not common to all young black people in high schools. Come on. So, okay, I've listened to everything you all had to say, but please understand that some of these books that you think are so empathetic or also have an underlying tone of sending the wrong message to young people. That's all I have to say.
Having read it, there is nothing in here that is inappropriate for teens. To ever say so is just a lie. This is one that really pisses me off. In the past 2 videos I've done on this with The Bluest Eye and George M. Johnson's book, All Boys Aren't Blue, I have these in-depth conversations where I'm like, sure, there's uncomfortable material in here, but discomfort does not mean we should ban it. Let's talk about why. Here, I don't even need to have that conversation. There's no reason to feel uncomfortable with this. I don't understand you if you are. You could not like the book, but to ever even try to form a sentence that starts with, here's why I think the hate you give is harmful to minors, is so unfathomable to me. Just because this book does not sugarcoat the experience of being a teenager, particularly being a teenager who is a black girl, does not mean that there's any grounds for removing this from the audience it was intended for. This book delivered exactly what it set out to do, and it does it well. Now, I'm going to get into my thoughts about how I think this book does conversations in a way that is really accessible for its intended audience, and I'll talk about the comments from people who do want to ban it. We're going to get into that, but just know up front that this is one that I cannot look at and not think that the people saying this stuff aren't just white supremacists. This is one of those times. This is one of the most challenged and banned books in the last few years since it came out in 2017. People have been racist towards it. Here's the complicated mess that is challenging and banning this book. Like, this is one that I'm not going to be nice. There is no benefit of the doubt here. There's no plausible deniability. This one is just, these people are racist. There is no reason to remove this book from the shelves of its intended audience. You can dislike it and decide that you and your kids don't have the ability to read it, but if you remove the access from other people, it is because you are racist. Normally I'm more coherent than this, but just not with this one. If you want me to sit here and give an essay on why it's important for All Boys Aren't Blue to frame the discussion on sexual assault the way it does, I have done that. If you want me to talk about the same thing in The Bluest Eye, I have done that. But there is no sexual assault in The Hate You Give. This is about race, and shutting down the conversation on race makes me know for a fact that you are a racist. And I just am not going to tone police myself and nice my way to saying, here's why I think this book should be on shelves. It never should have been removed. You guys are just fucking racist. But if you need me to talk about the content of the book, I'm happy to. I did read it. I really enjoyed it. Previously, in 2019, I did read there's a few books in this world that Angie Thomas has created. So there's Concrete Rose, which is a prequel to The Hate You Give. And then there's sort of a sequel to The Hate You Give featuring a completely different character named Bree, who is a rapper. It's called On the Come Up. And just like The Hate You Give, this got a movie adaptation. Now, I read On the Come Up in 2019. I have started and then stopped The Hate You Give several times. One time I got 35% into it, but then I kept getting distracted by other things. Nothing was wrong with it. It's a great book. The audiobook is narrated by Bonnie Turpin, who is one of the best to ever do it. But for some reason, I kept just not finishing it. I kept getting distracted. Other things would come up, and then I would lose my library hold, and then I would have to restart. But I finally finished it this time with my book club. This was a big hit with my book club. It sparked so much discussion, and I am so glad we read it. I was so impressed by this book, by its ability to handle so many things at once. It's not just about police brutality against young black people and also older black people, but in particular, the thing that kicks off the story is the murder of a young black boy by the hands of police. But it's also dealing with a complicated blended family situation, code switching, complicated friendships. It deals with young love in a very age-appropriate way. This is just a great book. There's a reason why it's so popular and a very, very popular book amongst teens. I think what's really going on here with banning this is just tone policing. This book is really digging into systemic inequality, talking about gun violence and drug use and stereotypes around those that are pushed upon marginalized communities. And this is such an accessible book to understand those issues for teens if you're a teen who's not experiencing them, but if you are a teen who's experiencing them, you're going to be able to see yourself reflected in this book. Because of that, that's why this book is so vital. It can be a window, it can be a mirror, it can be a sliding glass door, and for that reason, it is such an important text for its intended audience and should never be banned. All right, let's go over a few places where this was challenged or banned or moved and why. In Nassau County in September of 2023, in my home state of Florida, a bulk objection was put forth by a group called Citizens Defending Freedom. There were over 24 books that Citizens Defending Freedom complained about, and The Hate U Give was one of them. This resulted in a lawsuit and a subsequent settlement agreement. As part of the settlement, most of the books were returned to Nassau County Schools' shelves, but The Hate U Give was one of 12 books held for additional review. And this is currently ongoing as I am filming this. Its final review is set for May 29th. At 5 p.m. If you are in Nassau County, you might want to see about attending said meetings. Now, Citizens Defending Freedom has continued threatening the school district by filing complaints against its leaders to the county sheriff, calling the cops over books. They've also contacted Governor DeSantis' office, trying to remove the duly elected school board for agreeing to the settlement terms. There are press releases on Citizens Defending Freedom's website saying all of this. They also keep adding to the objections, so not just The Hate U Give and the other upwards of 20 titles, but they are adding on more objections, causing the district to waste time and resources on their complaints over books, again, like The Hate U Give. Other books on this list were 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher, Unravel Me by Taha Mafi, This One Summer, Tricks. Currently, you can check out The Hate U Give in Nassau County if you are over 18 or have parental permission. Similarly, other books that were challenged by Citizens Defending Freedom include A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I do understand on the one hand getting parental permission or being over 18. This is a nuanced situation. I understand those books in particular needing to be checked out by parental permission, but The Hate U Give, I cannot and will not understand. The other books that need parental permission are Water for Elephants, Beloved by Toni Morrison, The Kite Runner, The Infinite Moment of Us, 19 Minutes, The Almost Moon. But it's not just Nassau County. The hatred of The Hate U Give has been going on since it was published. In 2018, in Katy School District in the state of Texas, it was removed from all school libraries in that district. There was media uproar over this. Teachers, librarians, students came out to say that they rejected the idea that this was age inappropriate. But the superintendent said that the book was pervasively vulgar and that it was legally right to censor the book. 3 months after this, it was returned to the school district, but only allowed to be checked out with parental consent. In 2019, it was challenged at a Springfield, Missouri middle school. The original complaint was about the lack of specificity in permission slips as well as language and sexual situations, which we will talk about, but there is no sex on page in this book. The school district pulled the book to review it, a new permission slip was sent out, further complaints were made, and the book was pulled again. In South Carolina, the Fraternal Order of Police tried to have it removed from Wando High School optional reading assignments list for incoming high school freshmen, along with the book All-American Boys by Jason Reynolds, which is also a frequent target of bans. The Fraternal Order of Police said, "The books are almost an indoctrination of distrust of police, and we've got to put a stop to that." Ignoring, of course, that it is our First Amendment right to say that we do not trust the police. In 2022, parents at March North Allegheny High School in Pennsylvania announced on Facebook, of course, that they were planning to protest the book at a school board meeting. Students and parents came out to defend the book staying on shelves. The book was being used in curriculum, but at the beginning of the unit in which the book was taught as curriculum, parents received communication that told them about the book, what was in it, as well as the school's commitment to addressing the content of it in an age-appropriate way. And families, here's the kicker, had the option to opt out and read a different book, thus protecting their parental rights in education to guide their child's educational environment to their specifications. But no families in this case did opt out. One student observed that there are very few books that depict Black struggle outside the context of slavery in their curriculum. This same student said, "Please do not remove this book from the curriculum because it might be sensitive. Sensitive just means that people do not want to talk about it." Another student said that the book illustrates the urban versus suburban divide and said, "What is the role of an educator if not to make sense of the world for students?" A parent said that it was an important book to discuss the topic of racism and that was important in their specific circumstances because they were in a predominantly white area. North Allegheny High School students also defended the book in their school newspaper called The Uproar, where one student stated, "I know the complaints were officially about drug use and language, but I think that it is the underlying discomfort with the ideas of police brutality and racism discussed in the book." Another student said, "The resistance to the book is so clearly a reflection of the inability of our community to acknowledge the unsettling situations Black Americans go through." And none of the parents who said that they were going to protest the book at the meeting actually did so. Not a single person spoke up against this book at the school board meeting, and The Hate U Give remains a part of North Allegheny High School's 9th grade curriculum. Meanwhile, parents in a Minnesota school district opposed the book, saying that they wanted it out because it was part of the freshman curriculum. They said that they were concerned over the profanity, sexual situations. I just want to remind you there is no sexual content in this book, drinking and drugs, neither of which our main character engages in. The curriculum committee voted to keep the title, but then the superintendent decided to bring it to a vote, and the board voted 5-0 to remove it from the curriculum, citing profanity and its omission of the police officer's viewpoint. Oh, I forgot. We always have to center police officers when police officers shoot people of color, including children who are unarmed. You know, like Tamir Rice. Certainly, the person that we should have been centering in that real-life conversation was the police officer. I forgot. Just as a reminder, Tamir Rice can't speak for himself, can he? Whose fault is that? No, let's continue centering the police officer's viewpoint. Oh, that made me so mad, I can't get it together. In New York, parents in the Putnam Valley Central School District decided that this book was critical race theory, which they cannot accurately define, and that it had an anti-cop bias after it appeared in the district's 9th grade optional summer reading list. Optional summer reading list. Thankfully, the book was retained. In 2023, Missouri passed a bill, Bill 775, and as a result, the St. Clair School District removed The Hate U Give from school libraries, fearing potential criminal penalties for their school staff. That's what we call making laws in the hopes that people will self-censor, and it working. In Kansas, a group of parents challenged 5 titles in the Shawnee Heights Unified School District, including The Hate U Give, Genderqueer, and All Boys Aren't Blue. At that point, all 5 titles that were challenged were retained. If that has not already been changed, I would not be surprised, and if it hasn't changed already, it certainly will. In 2024, Collier County Public Schools, here in my state of Florida, removed 88 titles from school district library shelves because board members were worried that they had, quote, sexual content prohibited by Florida's HB 1069. The district posted a 73-page document to their website listing explicit sexual content used to justify the ban. This is their rationale for banning The Hate U Give. There's talk of an affair between 2 adults. There's talk of an affair between 2 adults, as in the main character references it. It's not 2 adults talking about having an affair and you're in their POV. Teens engage in heavy petting. That is not the same as sexual content that appeals to prurient interest, that is what is against the law. Talk about having sex and condoms. Yes, in a very age-appropriate way. A teen girl is described as being on birth control. That is the reality of many teens across the United States, including in Collier County. There's discussion of teen pregnancy and the assumption that a married couple is having sex when they go to their bedroom and turn the television up loud. It's inappropriate for the main character to say that her parents went to their own bedroom and turned up the music, and for her brothers and her to say, ew. That's age inappropriate. That's what they think is violating House Bill 1069. Are you for real? Oh, and a woman is revealed to be a sex worker. Oh, I guess we need to ban the Bible then. In 2023, The Hate U Give was the most banned book in Georgia. In December of 2024, it was removed from the teen section and moved to the adult section of the St. Tammany Parish library system in New Orleans. And that's where this video of this woman, Karen Gilio, says if she were black, she would be offended by its contents. Why does a book written by an adult but for and about young adults need to be either banned or removed or moved to the adult section? Let's talk about what is actually in this book. But first, let me let you hear from a teacher of 9th graders. Her name is Ashunti, and she was nice enough to come on to a different video to talk about The Hate U Give as one of her favorite banned books. And since this video is so important because it's coming from a teacher of 9th graders, I wanted to insert it into this video as well so that you can get the perspective from a teacher who gets feedback from her students.
Hello everybody, my name is Ashunti. I'm a bookish influencer. You can find me on all the platforms, and my favorite banned book is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. This is my favorite banned book because it is a book that I actually teach in my class. So if you have never seen me before, you probably don't know, but I am also an educator who teaches 9th grade African American literature. And this is one of the books that I have taught now 2 years in a row. And I have personally experienced the way it has opened up so many important conversations about race, racism, identity, systemic oppression, and all those topics in our country in a way that my students, my 14 and 15-year-olds, are able to not only express their own experiences, but learn to comprehend these things and start understanding how they fit in the world and in society and what they are going to be seeing and experiencing when they go out into the world, as well as ways that they can deal with the effects of this, because for a lot of them, they haven't had the language to put together to the experiences they've had. And this book has helped me to teach them that language. It has helped me to have these conversations with them. It has helped me to open up space in my room to allow them to process their thoughts and process what they're seeing in the world. And so I understand the importance of a book like this being there in the classroom to start these conversations and to be on the shelves for students to read. And past those conversations, I have also seen the way that my students enjoy this story and have gained so much. Every student, and not every student, but most of my students, if they've read this book before, they said this is one of their favorite books. After reading it in my class, they tell me how much they enjoyed this, and I do a survey at the end to ask them if they think this is a book that is worthwhile for the next incoming freshmen to read. And I have each year gotten a yes that I have done this, and that is why I continue to teach this. This book is challenged all over America, and I am so happy that I'm lucky enough to be able to keep this in my classroom and have people who support me and encourage me to teach not only this book, but other books like it. So thank you, Angie Thomas, for putting this book out. Thank you for everybody who fights that this book being challenged. And honestly, I am so proud of myself for choosing this story and making sure that my kids can have these challenging conversations, because it is challenging to have these conversations as an adult. It is challenging to have these conversations as an adult talking to children. And I am so happy to be putting in the work, and I'm so grateful that every year I make this choice to continue to include stories like this. So make sure you check out The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas if you have never heard of this story before or checked it out.
So there's some discussion on like what a teacher sees her students seeing in this book. Now, what her students are experiencing in this book, yes, there are references to sex and drugs and alcohol. Our main character engages in none of those things. Now, this book does have quite a lot of swear words in it. And frankly, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't give a fuck. Teenagers talk like this. Talking like this does not actually have any negative consequences. It just makes you uncomfortable. I don't care that it makes you uncomfortable. You don't like teenagers or minors in general swearing. Yeah, there is a reaction that we have when we see a child, whether they be 5 or 15, saying a swear word. that is culturally conditioned into you and actually doesn't have any real negative effect on you or that child. Therefore, you cannot make an argument that it needs to be banned. You would have to prove that there is a negative health and wellness outcome and not just your personal feelings being harmed in order for me to agree with you that that is a reason to ban a book. Otherwise, you are just an advocate for censorship based on your personal feelings. And that's a you problem, not the rest of us. Do I teach my kids to swear? No. I swear. My kids know I swear. I told my kids, hey, we have to talk about context when you're swearing, which you should probably not get in the habit of now because you will get in trouble at school because the rules are don't swear at school. So you're going to have to learn that culturally, as a kid, we tend to swear not in front of our parents because it makes everybody else uncomfortable. Typically, kids swear in front of their friends, and then when you become an adult, you either choose not to swear at all or you swear just in front of certain people. It doesn't actually have an effect on me if my kids swear. My 8-year-old chooses not to swear at all. He feels uncomfortable doing it, whereas my 5-year-old sometimes randomly will get very upset and say, this is so fuckingly stupid. To which I explain to him, hey, you should probably not get in the habit of saying that, and if you're gonna get in the habit of saying that, you should probably not add the ly on the end of it. What does it actually do if my 5-year-old says fuckingly? Nothing. It does nothing. It just makes you uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. But that's a me problem, and I do not need to legislate to make everybody else accommodate my personal feelings. So we're just gonna get the whole profanity thing out of the way because again, it doesn't actually have any effect. Kids are already swearing. Kids swearing doesn't do anything. There's no tangible problem when people swear. You're uncomfortable. Frankly, get over it or cry about it at home, okay? That's as nice as I can be about the profanity thing. The rest of it, we can talk about the drugs and the alcohol content and the sexual content and the discussions of race, but the profanity thing is the absolute most stupid argument that y'all are making for not retaining this book on shelves. In the beginning of this book, Star, Carter, our main character, is at a party. This is where she sees Khalil, her friend, who is murdered by a police officer. But first, we get introduced to a few things. Yes, the other kids around her, some of them are smoking weed, some of them are drinking alcohol. This is simply depicting the reality of being a high schooler at a party. It is not saying do these things. The main character is not doing these things. Depiction is not endorsement. This is literacy 101, I fear. I don't understand how adults feel that depiction and endorsement are the same thing. We are adults. We're supposed to be wise. If teenagers reading this can understand it, I'm not sure why adults can't. Either you're stupid or you're being disingenuous about reading this book. I suspect that it is a combination of the two of those things. In fact, the main character says she's a little bit uncomfortable. She didn't know there would be this many people here. She's getting nauseous from the smell of weed. So if anything, is this not a deterrent? It does mention condoms in chapter 1. Here's the context. Guys in their freshest kicks and sagging pants grind so close to girls they just about need condoms. You just described literally every high school dance I went to. And you described it in a way that I would have said it at Star's age. Just because you don't like that teenagers talk like this does not mean that you can make it go away by not having it depicted in text. They're going to speak like this regardless. I spoke like this and I didn't need a book to do it. The fact is, teenagers are young adults. They are humans. They are going to start talking like this. You cannot legislate to make that a non-reality. We're introduced early on that she has a half-brother named Seven who has another half-sister. So her and her brother share a dad. They do not share a mom. And her brother shares a mom with another girl. This other girl is constantly like giving her a little bit of grief for going to a private school that is predominantly white. And she also gives her a little bit of grief calling Seven her own brother rather than their shared brother. Angie Thomas was very deliberate in trying to get this theme going from page 1, where you see that Star feels like she inhabits two worlds but never fully, and is always on the outside a little bit from both of them, whether it be her rich white peers or in her predominantly black neighborhood. She always feels like she's a little bit on the outside and inhabiting this like third space on her own. Now, this other girl that she shares a half-brother with, her dad's name is King. Star's father was part of a gang called the King Lords. His father grew up in it. His father went to prison. Eventually, Star's father went to prison because he took the blame for King, this other girl's father. He did 3 years in prison while Star was growing up, and she talks about the ways that this affected her life, even though now her father is back in her life, her parents are together, they all live together, but those lost years did have an effect on her life. She became closer to her uncle. There's a little bit of resentment that her father has towards her uncle for stepping in and being a father, and in a lot of ways her father is shown throughout this book to try to be like making up for that lost time and trying to do right by his family while also trying to make amends to the community because he got out of being part of the King Lords. King, this other girl's father, is still very much involved in the King Lords. He did let Star's father leave because he took the fall for him and he was able to exit the game because of that. Now, King's daughter, so Seven's half-sister, is described by our main character, Star, as she's messy as hell sometimes, always fighting somebody and quick to say her daddy will whoop somebody's ass. You don't see me going around starting shit. So this girl tells her, you're so lucky you go to that white people school and don't have to deal with hoes, like this girl that she's, starting shit with. And Star says, trust me, my school has hoes too. Hoedom is universal. Now, this might make you as an adult uncomfortable to hear teenagers saying, but unfortunately for you, your discomfort doesn't have to be everybody else's problem. That's a you problem. Teenagers talk like this whether you like it or not. Our feelings on it are moot. They talk about Star's like white group of peers that she goes to school with. I bet they'd be doing Molly and shit, don't they? White kids love popping pills. Listen, as a white kid who went to high school parties with richer kids, that is just a truth. Star says, no, their parties are actually pretty dope. And her friend says, shit, bitch, next time invite me, I'll party with them white kids. Now, this might make you uncomfortable. It's not there to tell you, hey, go party with the white kids and pop Molly. The point of it was the next piece where Star thinks to herself, at Williamson, I don't have to play it cool. She doesn't feel cool around her neighborhood friends. I'm cool by default at Williamson, her predominantly white school, because I'm one of the only black kids there. Funny how it works with white kids though. It's dope to be black until it's hard to be black. That was the point of that conversation. The point of that conversation was not, hey kids, use a swear, or hey kids, pop some Molly. It was an honest conversation reflecting how actual teenagers speak and things that actual teenagers do, whether you like it or not. It was not prescribing that behavior. It was depicting that behavior as a reality, which it is, and using it as a way to get to the point, which was Star feels like on the outside of two different groups. This is very easy to understand. And yet, in order to there is no misunderstanding it. There is only misrepresenting it, which is very frustrating. It's very frustrating to have read all of the misinformation, the scare tactics used by people trying to, or effectively getting rid of this book from shelves. What an absolute, shame on you. Shame on you for misrepresenting what was in the book. Or are you too stupid to understand what was actually happening? You just, read the word Molly and got upset? At this party, some shots ring out. She runs away and she runs into Khalil, who is a former friend of hers, who they sort of lost touch, but they grew up together, and she's always had a little bit of a crush on him, despite the fact that right now she does have a boyfriend who is a white kid named Chris who goes to her school, Williamson. So her and Khalil are leaving this party and he's going to drive her home. Her and Khalil talk about this, that there was some shit started because of territory wars between the King Lords and the Garden something. There's another rival gang in Garden Heights. So they talk about this and he says to her, Tupac, they're listening to Tupac, and Tupac had this quote that said, the hate you give little infants fucks everybody. And that is what Thug Life stands for, which is where the title of this book comes from, The Hate You Give. Thug Life stands for the hate you give little infants fucks everybody. Meaning what society gives us as youth, it bites them in the ass when we wild out. Then the conversation turns to, them growing up. And I will say that one thing that is going to turn off a lot of readers in this book is the amount of Harry Potter references are heavy. This came out before J.K. Rowling sort of became a social pariah for good reason in the book community, because the fact is trans women are women. That's just a fact, and I'm not going to argue about it with people in my comments. You people are a waste of time. I'm not sorry, leave. But yeah, so a lot of people don't like Harry Potter references in their books and their movies anymore, so this is one of those books. So if you find that hard to read, it's heavy in this book. So for instance, it comes up where it says they used to go over each other's house because you had the Harry Potter movies. What did we used to call ourselves? The Hood Trio, tighter than the inside of Voldemort's nose, which is, you know, objectively a funny joke, but it's a lot of Harry Potter references. Like, if I'm going to offer a critique of this book, that's like basically the only one that I have for you. Other than that, I think this is like a genuinely good young adult book written for young adults in a way that is impactful for them to have an understanding of like nuanced concepts. He explains to her that he's going through a rough time, that his grandma lost her job because she couldn't do it while she's going through chemo. She has cancer now, and Star feels badly that they lost touch. And then they are pulled over by police. Not that it matters, because he should not have been murdered is the point, but Khalil was not doing anything wrong. He was not speeding. He wasn't driving recklessly. The only thing that happened was the cop alleged that the taillight was out. When this happens, Star sort of goes into this mode where she reverts to, she talks about having been told by her family, there's two talks that her family gave to her. First was the birds and the bees, and the second was what to do if stopped by a police officer. This is not something that happened in my family. We were not taught, like, I'm a white girl, first of all. I was never taught what do you do if you're stopped by a police officer. My husband, who is not a white person, did not have the same upbringing as me, and definitely had the talk about what to do if stopped by a police officer. So now, raising kids who, depending on like who's looking at my kids, they are not sometimes perceived as white. Like, for instance, I was once stopped by a woman in Walmart and asked, "Cute baby, why is he so brown?" It was then that I knew that my kids wouldn't always pass as white, and then that sort of spiraled into Carlos and I having to have these conversations about how early do we start having that talk with our kids. So anyways, all this to say, this would have been helpful to me as a white girl growing up to understand how different my upbringing was from other people's upbringings. And then I wouldn't have been like, it wouldn't have been so jarring to understand that raising my kids, I would have to have that talk with them. And Star explains, here's the rules my parents taught me of talking to a cop. After she explains, my mom taught me the birds and the bees. My mom is a nurse. She told me what went where, what didn't need to go there, or any damn where until I'm grown. Again, a very typical experience of having the sex talk with a parent when you are a teenager. So she reverts to those rules immediately when they are stopped by police, but it says Khalil breaks a rule. He doesn't do what the cop wants. The cop is white, mid-30s to early 40s, brown buzz cut. He says that their taillight is broken. Khalil says, "Are you going to give me a ticket or what?" And the cop says, "You know what? Get out of the car, smart guy." She says, "My parents haven't raised me to fear the police just to be smart around them. They told me it's not smart to move while a cop has his back to you." Khalil, out of the car, is waiting for the cop to get a ticket or whatever. He's, messing around at his car. Khalil turns back towards his own car, moves towards the window and says, "Are you okay, Star?" And this is when he is shot. We learn that Star has trauma from seeing another friend shot. The third friend that was in their friend group was a girl named Natasha, who was also shot during some gun violence that occurred when they were 10, not by a police officer. Out of the car, she's with Khalil and he is dying. He was shot several times, and he, just like Natasha, dies right in front of Star's eyes in Star's arms. This is obviously extremely traumatic for Star, but until other people got there, the cop had his gun trained on Star, even though she had not done anything wrong. She has to see his body covered up by a blanket. After this, Star is encouraged by her uncle, Carlos, who is a cop, to just talk to the police about what happened. Star is pretty traumatized. She does not want anybody to know that she was the witness of this. She doesn't tell anybody at Williamson, her predominantly white school. She doesn't tell her own boyfriend, Chris. She doesn't tell her two friends, Haley and Maya, I believe the other one's name is. She just mostly talks about it with her family. I think Star's family was so well done in this book. This is such like a family-oriented book, and every piece of like who these parents, especially individually, are really comes on page in a very natural way. So for instance, not long after this, Star and her brother Seven bring Star's mother food at her job. She's, again, a nurse. They're sitting there eating Chinese food, and who comes in sobbing is Khalil's mother. Now, Khalil and Star grew up together because they were taken care of by Khalil's grandmother, because Star's own grandmother, her mother's mother, kicked Star's mom out when she became pregnant at a young age, which is again a reality for many people. And so Star was in part raised by this woman and around Khalil, and they became very close. Now she has a lot of guilt for sort of losing touch with Khalil and his grandmother. She goes and talks to his grandmother, and her family is trying to raise money for Khalil's funeral, while also feeling like Star owes it to Khalil to be honest about what happened, because already the narrative is getting shifted around what happened and trying to make it Khalil's fault, which it was not. There is no reason, there is no reality in which it is okay for a police officer to be so scared of a child moving that they shoot that child dead. And it's not just children. All people, all humans should not fear moving in the presence of a police officer. So pardon me if I don't really care that the Fraternal Order of Police or any group of school board members thinks that we need to prioritize the feelings of a person who cannot manage their own fear when they have a gun in their hands. So as I was saying, Khalil's mother shows up to Star's mother's work and she's sobbing. This absolutely broke me. Now, Khalil's mother has a problem with addiction to drugs. We find out later that the reason why Khalil had started to be involved in some activity with the King Lords, he was not a gang member, but he had been involved in some activity, was because his mother owed some money and he was just trying to help. But even if he wasn't being involved, like let's say he was involved in gang activity, being involved in gang activity is not a reason for a cop to pull you over and shoot you dead. This book is a really good exercise in how we need to zoom out and think, why am I trying to justify why a policeman murdered somebody? Because that is so often how we are conditioned to think. And I think that what's behind these people saying we need to consider the policeman's perspective is hoping to keep that the status quo rather than saying cops should not be murdering people, period. So Khalil's mother is sobbing and Star is so frustrated with this. She's like, I'm so frustrated. You know, his mom was never there for him. He sobbed for his mom. He missed his mom. He wanted his mom all the time. She was never a mother to him. And her mom chastises her saying, Star, that was his mother. And she goes into the mode of nurse very quickly for this woman in a way that felt like very real. These felt like very real people. And Star learns a lesson that everything is not so cut and dry. It's not you're a bad mom, so you don't deserve to miss your child. Now her father, he runs a store, like a food, like a bodega kind of thing. Star works there. He took it over from somebody else. He worked there when he got out of prison, and then he took it over from the previous guy who owned it. So she spends a lot of time with her dad, and her dad teaches her a whole lot about history. He teaches her about Malcolm X and the Black Panthers, which is great because that's a super necessary thing to learn about. I would know because I'm only learning about it in adulthood. Here is my literal textbook from when I was a child. I went to private Christian schools. Here is the only thing that my private Christian school education taught me about Malcolm X, that he was a Black supremacist, and it does not even have a place where it defines Black supremacist in the text. So I have to wonder, if this is the standard they want, then maybe that's the reason why they want this book banned, is because they don't want kids learning the real history about who Malcolm X was and what he did. They want us learning about Malcolm X was a Black supremacist. Another person that her dad teaches her about is Nat Turner, which is a person I never learned about in school. Actually, let me read this to you. This is a really important piece. The tactic of empowering the oppressed goes even further back than the Panthers, though. Name one, he says to her. Is he serious? He's always making me think. This one takes me a second. The Slave Rebellion of 1831. Nat Turner empowered and educated other slaves, and it led to one of the biggest slave revolts in history. And they're talking about this idea that Khalil had mentioned to her about the hate you give. So what's the hate they're giving little infants in society today? He asks her. She says, racism? And he says, you got to get a little more detailed than that. Think about Khalil and his whole situation before he died. She says, he was a drug dealer and possibly a gang member. Why was he a drug dealer? He asks her. Why are so many people in our neighborhood drug dealers? They need money, Star says, and they don't have a lot of other ways to get it. Right, Daddy says, lack of opportunities. Corporate America doesn't bring jobs to our communities, and they damn sure ain't quick to hire us. Even if you do have a high school diploma, so many of the schools in our neighborhoods don't prepare prepare us well enough. That's why when your mama talked about sending you and your brothers to Williamson, I agreed. Our schools don't get the resources to equip you like Williamson does. It's easier to find some crack than it is to find a good school around here. Now think about this. How did the drugs even get into our neighborhood? This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that we're talking about. That shit is flown into our communities, but I don't know anybody with a private jet. Do you? Drugs come from somewhere and they're destroying our community. You got folks like Khalil's mom who think they need them to survive, and then you got the Khalils who think they need to sell them to survive. Addicts can't get jobs unless they're clean, and they can't pay for rehab unless they got jobs. When kids like Khalil get arrested for selling drugs, they either spend most of their life in prison, another billion-dollar industry, or they have a hard time getting a job and probably start selling drugs again. That's the hate they're giving us, a system designed against us. That's thug life. Now, it does not end there. She asks follow-up questions. She says to him, I hear you, but Khalil didn't have to sell drugs. You stopped doing it, Daddy. True, but unless you're in his shoes, don't judge him. Jesus Christ, no, literally Jesus Christ. Is that not what Jesus Christ said? I don't understand. It literally says the same shit that Jesus Christ himself said. Don't judge, don't cast stones. I don't understand. Why are y'all like this? You're so hypocritical. Oh man, I need to get it together. I have to be a professional. Unless you're in his shoes, don't judge him. It's easier to fall into that life than it is to stay out of it, especially in a situation like this. Now, one more question. After everything I've said, how does thug life apply to the protest you're seeing and the riots? Because in the wake of the murder of Khalil, people start protesting and rioting. They're destroying local businesses, etc. So Star says to her father, everybody's pissed because the cop hasn't been charged, but also because he's not the first one to do something like this and get away with it. It's been happening, and people will keep rioting until it changes. So I guess the system's still giving hate and everybody's getting fucked. Her dad says, watch your mouth, but yeah, that's about right. And we won't stop getting fucked until it changes. That's the key. It's got to change. And this is the moment where she realizes, okay, in order for things to change, we cannot be silent. I don't want to be silent. So she's going to talk about what happened. But she also learns from her friend that she needs to talk about Khalil as not just a person who died, and definitely not allow his narrative to become, oh, well, he was that drug dealer who died, but instead talk about who he was. He was a whole person, a whole human being. Now, where else have we seen this? Time and time again, when Black folks are murdered by the police, there is nothing but the media coming and trying to find any detail, any reason to say, yeah, they were shot dead, but did you hear that they used to do drugs? Did you hear that they used to be a criminal? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was cause for executing them. And so Star has to go out of her way to help humanize Khalil again. That never should have been the case. Khalil was always a human. He never should have been murdered. Sure, he shouldn't have dealt drugs. He also shouldn't have been in a position where he felt he had to. Feels really comfortable to believe that police are there to help us, and when police murder somebody, our first instinct should not be, well, what were they doing? What had they done 10 years ago? Police should not be murdering people, period. And if police are murdering people of color at an exorbitant rate, it's time to ask yourself why, instead of ask yourself how the police are feeling about it. There is a nuanced conversation about this, as well as police. Carlos, her uncle Carlos, is a police officer, and she talks to another non-white police officer. This book is not a book that is trying to depict all white people bad, though if you read the Goodreads reviews, that is certainly what some people have decided that this book is about. There's a lot of nuance in the conversation on being a police officer, and whether you agree with that or don't agree with that is not really the point. The point is that the author tried to have a nuanced conversation, and there's no reason why we can't allow nuanced conversations to remain on shelves, remain in curriculum, for kids to look at for themselves and then make their own decisions about, make their own opinions about. Books on shelves should not only exist to parrot your own feelings. You should have books on the shelf that you disagree with. You know how many fucking Christian nationalist books I read? At least a few a year. When I read those books, they don't automatically change my mind on things. My point is, this book existing on a shelf or existing in curriculum is not going to lead to kids hating white cops. If anything, it's going to encourage them to have nuanced discussion and hopefully look up things like the Black Panthers and Nat Turner and the history of racist policing here in the United States, and history topics that we don't typically talk about. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit decide, maybe I shouldn't center my comfort anymore. But centering comfort is something that happens with Star's friend Haley. Her friend Haley makes racist comments, and when Star says, hey, that feels kind of racist, Haley feels more upset that she's being called a racist than by holding these racist beliefs, these stereotypes. Star finally talks to her other friend, who is East Asian, and she's like, you know, Haley actually has been saying racist stuff to me too, and behind your back she's been saying she doesn't like that you post all of that, quote, black stuff on your Tumblr. This book aged itself by having Tumblr. I don't think teens really use Tumblr anymore. Do they? I don't know. I never was in the Tumblr generation. Am I still out of touch? Are y'all still using Tumblr? You're gonna have to tell me. Fuck! Anyway, she unfollowed her Star's Tumblr, specifically after Star had posted stuff about Emmett Till. There's another kid that we don't learn about in our history books. And yet Haley centers her own discomfort and her own racism, but then gets more upset about being called a racist. But then there's also nuance to this, because Star and Maya have to reflect on the fact that when these things were said in their presence about the other by Haley, they just sort of brushed them off, and they have to talk about how, oh, it was so normalized, I didn't really think about it, and I'm not going to do that anymore. Haley says stuff that honestly sounds an awful lot like the comment sections now whenever white people have to talk about racism. Even in the book community, whenever somebody writes something that's racist into a book, you have all these predominantly white women coming to the comment section saying things like this. Oh my God, you're still upset about that? That was so long ago. Star says, doesn't make it okay, and you can't even apologize for it. Haley says, I'm not apologizing because it was only a joke. It doesn't make me racist. I'm not letting you guys guilt trip me like this. What's next? You want me to apologize because my ancestors were slave masters or something stupid? Star says calmly, it's your joke was hurtful. If you give a damn about Maya, you'd apologize and at least try to see why it hurt her, because Haley had made a comment about Maya's family for Thanksgiving. She said, oh, did your family eat cats? Which is a racist stereotype against East Asian folks. It's not my fault she can't get over a joke from freaking freshman year. Just like it's not my fault if you can't get over what happened to Khalil. Star says, I'm just supposed to get over the fact that he was murdered. Haley says, yes, get over it. He was probably going to end up dead anyway. He was a drug dealer and a gangbanger. Someone was going to kill him eventually. The cop probably did everyone a favor. One less drug dealer. Think about the way that people talked about Trayvon Martin. And it's not just Trayvon Martin. I mean, the list, it grows. The end of the book actually says, it would be easy to quit if it was just about me, Khalil, that night, and that cop. It's about way more than that, though. It's about Seven, Sakani, Kenya, Devante. Those are the people in her vicinity that she's worried about being affected by violence and racism and being shot by police officers. Then she says, it's also about Oscar, Ayana, Trayvon, Rekia, Michael, Eric, Tamir, John. Think about all of the names that are added onto that list now. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ezell, Sandra, Freddie, Alton, Philando. It's even about that little boy in 1955 who nobody recognized at first, Emmett Till. The messed up part, there are so many more, yet I think it'll change one day. How, I don't know. When, I definitely don't know. Why? Because there will always be somebody ready to fight. Maybe it's my turn. So that is the discussions on race and racism in this book, and I think that that is incredibly age appropriate, but more than that, I think it's important. I think it's necessary. This is a book I absolutely would give my kids at 13, 14, 15, maybe even younger if I felt like my kid was showing interest. I could see a 12-year-old reading this. I don't see a problem with that. Even in the regards to the sexual content, which is the part that I'm going to end this video on. The sexual content in this is nothing. The sexual content in this is references. There is no on-page sex here. It mostly talks about like physical feelings of being interested, which at 16, 17 is very normal. Most people, predominantly like the age when people start to become like sexually active is 16. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying what is. And so it does not help teens to ignore that reality. It certainly doesn't make them safer. It doesn't make them less likely to engage in sexual conduct by ignoring that reality. This book talks about that reality. It talks about how normally parents are like, you know, don't engage in that stuff. Star's mother, realizing that she became pregnant at a young age and wanting to prevent that, does have discussions with her daughter. She is on birth control just in case, which honestly, a lot of my friends were on birth control at 15, 16. I remember the first time one of my friends told me, you know, your periods seem awful. Maybe you should consider getting on birth control, which I couldn't get my dad to agree to because he was such a fucking prude. So then inevitably I start having sex at 16, don't know what I'm doing, don't even know how to put a condom on, and I'm lucky that I didn't end up pregnant and remained having terrible periods with absolutely no help from birth control. What a great situation. Definitely the best case scenario. That's what we should do, please. The first discussion we get about Star's discussions of sex with her boyfriend is that they had previously said, we're not ready to do this. And then one day they were making out, which is a normal thing that 16-year-olds do. And her boyfriend pulled out a condom and was like, which is unfortunately a normal thing that 16-year-old boys do. And she got really mad at him and didn't talk to him. And that's where we start the book, is her ignoring him because she didn't like that he did that, which I think is great. I think it's great that she didn't feel like romantically, I have to do this because my boyfriend really wants me to. I'm glad that she stood on her own and said, I'm not ready to do this. And I'm annoyed that even though we've talked about this previously, you've decided to spring this on me. And he feels badly about it and says he's not going to do it again. And then later, when she is very upset about Khalil and he finally knows about it because she talks to him about it, she's trying to convince him that they should move from just making out to having sex. And he says, this isn't a good time for that. This is a great book as far as being appropriate, talking about having like real conversations that teens are having. It actually encourages teens to stop and think for a moment before they just jump into having sex. I'm glad that we saw that Chris wasn't taking advantage of Star when she was super sad. I'm glad that Star said, I made a boundary and you didn't respect it to Chris, and he apologized for that. This is like best case scenario. Are you kidding me? As far as teens having sex, like, which is a reality, we have to depict realities. And if we're going to teach kids about conversations around sex, again, this is best case scenario. We're teaching them boundaries. We're teaching them you do not have to say yes, even though you really like somebody. Don't do it just because your girlfriend's sad right now. She might regret it. Think about things before you do them. Teens have way less impulse control than us adults do. So encouraging them to think about things beforehand, things that they are engaging in regardless, is a net good. But obviously, like, that's like, we're talking about people complaining about that who are also complaining about the fact that there is a sex worker mentioned in this book, when that is all throughout the Bible. In fact, Jesus himself is hanging out with sex workers on the regular, and yet y'all are like, judge and get rid of the book that mentions a sex worker. What are y'all talking about? And then the idea that two married parents, like teenagers, can't make a comment about, ew, gross, our parents went off to their room and turned their music up. That's too far. I can't take y'all seriously anymore. You have proven that this is not about protecting children. This is not about porn. This is about you being uncomfortable and wanting to rewrite the entirety of the earth according to your comfort. And frankly, I think that that's fucking pathetic of you. This is a great book for teens. I am grateful for the teachers that teach it. I'm grateful for the kids that engage in it, because I'm just glad that kids read. And I'm grateful to Angie Thomas for writing something that is so readable for teens, that has maintained readability for teens from 2017 when it was written to almost a decade later now in 2025. That's an incredible achievement. And I'm thankful for the way that she broke down conversations to make them so easy to understand, while also, again, maintaining such readability. These feel like real people. This does not feel like a lesson. This feels like sitting down and watching an actual family have conversations. This was a moving book. I cried several times, especially regarding Khalil's mother. This is a book that shows so many different shades of people and doesn't reduce them down to one thing, which is so important when we're dealing with each other, because that is our nature, is to reduce each other down to one thing and forget each other's humanity. This book encourages us to remember each other's humanity. Why wouldn't you want that? This is an incredibly important work. It needs to remain on shelves. It needs to remain in classrooms. And I'm so grateful to my book club for reading it for this month of March. I am trying to do a review of every book club book. We, as I'm filming this, have not had our meeting for this. I'm ahead of the game for once. I read it very quickly. The audiobook, Bonnie Turpin is the narrator, and that that made it go by so quickly. I highly recommend the audiobook. It is just compulsively like you're just really able to listen to it because the story is so well done, and then Bonnie Turpin just really brings like a whole new energy to it that I just absolutely adored. It is on Kindle Unlimited, but if you have access to it, I got it through my library. Shout out to Libby. If you have audiobook access, I highly recommend. I tandem read, which I super appreciate tandem reading because I feel like I got the most out of reading this due to that. And, you know, when my kids are, 13 or so, I think I might encourage them to tandem read this, listen to it with me on audio. And then when you have a chance, check out the actual book and take some notes, and let's talk about the different things that, that were in this, and let's share our differing ideas and what we learned and what we disagree with and what we agree with. I mean, this is like such a great conversation tool. I can completely understand why it's in curriculum. As a mom, as a parent, as a reader, as a former 16-year-old, this is a quality book, and I'm so glad that we read it for book club. We're going to have our meeting at the end of this month. There's still time to join if you want to join the Discord, and you can chat with us about The Hate U Give. And then next month's book for the month of April is Out of Darkness by Ashley Hope Perez. Anyway, I gave this 5 stars. Let me know what you think of The Hate U Give, and particularly what you think of people trying to ban The Hate U Give from classrooms. If you made it this far, let's see. Star was really into shoes. She really likes, what are those shoes? Air Force ones. So I guess, I don't know, in honor of Star and her love of shoes. Oh, she also likes to wear Converse. She loves shoes. So in honor of Star, if you made it this far, leave a shoe emoji down below. Comments and questions go down there as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Please read banned books and talk about banned books. Okay? Okay, bye. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Andy Mason, Ashley H, Astra, Barry B, Call Me Kodiak, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Eric D, Jade L, John E, K, Kaleno K, Katie Ann, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly. Y'all put food in your name, and I'm always doing this at lunchtime and I always get hungry. Lex, Other Lex, Lily, Mataraptor, Megwin Rose, Melissa, Minby, Mixer Boneless, Alice, Peggy Lou, Rain, Reese, SJ, Scarlett, Samar, SMK, Spoopy, Steph B, 3 raccoons in a trench coat, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. And last but not least, I also have to say a big thank you to my Potato Search Marxist patrons, and those are Adrian, Aaron, Alejandra, Alicia's Last Frayed Nerve, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Bari the Witch, Beck, Blythe Lavender, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Bridget G. Collins, Kate B, Caitlin, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate, Kathy, Celeste, Claire Online, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Danita, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast, Silco Apologist Era. Good shit. Dorian, Dorothea supports public education. Hell yeah. Draco-chan, Drive-By Thinker, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Aaron Starlight, Fiona, Gadarn, Halia Artisan, Hannah C, Helen, Harising, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Gender Queer, Jenny G, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, Kai Brecker has not read 6 of Crows, Caitlin, Catherine, Katie L, Katrina, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTV, Kayana, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay M, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Macy Jane, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Mary, Megan, Malara, May, Morgan, Myth Lesbian, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Paige P, Paul, Penelope, Penny Shilling, Foxglove, Plague Carrier, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Reba, Rebecca R, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Sikoria, Saintbringer, Sakyalume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie, Stardust, T Delegati, Talia, That Nerdy Mystic, That One Cute Chick, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work Today. Oh my gosh, I forget how unhinged it gets at the end. Triple M, Tito Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny, Waves, Wobbs, Writer A, and last but not least, Zayden's award-winning Eggplant. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.